hello to my air signs Libra, Aquarius and Gemini. Welcome to round 1 of Eclipse season 2024. You'll find the timestamps for your rising signs listed below. Hello Libra Rising, welcome to your reading for Eclipse season round 1 of 2024. Now I've decided to do something a bit different this time, Libra Rising. Rather than give you separate horoscopes for each of the eclipses, I thought that we could speak to them both in the one reading so we can look at the polarity on the chart between the signs and also the houses. One great way to get your head around astrology is to remember that the polarized signs have a lot in common with one another, as do the houses. Their definition tends to inform the other. And because we're in this thick, dense, unpredictable feeling right now, I thought that unity might be the best way forward. I thought that by discussing what makes us separate brings us together if we can find it. Now, as I said, eclipse season has never failed to bring about sharp, severe, sudden endings and also a deluge of extra energy into a part of our life that we didn't see coming. And so it is unpredictable, and it's a time when we can't trust the moon. And for those of us that have become so in union with the moon, that do look to it as our guiding light, that do help us soothe our hearts during difficult times, when we can't trust the energy or the instability of the moon's energy, we can feel really frightened or we can feel really unsure of ourselves. So hopefully by this examination, we'll get to work with that, or not, I should say. We're not going to work with this energy. We're going to let it happen to us, but at least we'll have some kind of context for the coming month, the coming weeks to come. Now, the two signs that we're speaking about specifically in this reading really include you on a very personal level. On one side of the scale, we have the lunar eclipse in Libra that is happening on the 25th of March, if you're in the Southern Hemisphere with me, possibly on the day that I release this to you. So hopefully it comes to you just in time. On the other side of that polarity, we're speaking to Aries, which on your birth chart is the sign that is in your 7th house of relationships, of love, of the other. And so you can see here that the definitions of the first being self, solo enterprise, soul's rising intention, and the 7th of the other, of our connections, our bonds, our relationships, they speak to two sides of the same coin. The energies of the signs do a similar thing. Libra is about equity, is about harmony, about right relationship, coming together, about giving and receiving in equal measure. And Aries is about self-determination, individuality, confidence, bravery, and sometimes selfishness. So this is what we've got to work with during unstable moons. On the 25th of March, there may be a feeling of relinquishment that comes over you. There may be parts of yourself or part of your nature, part of your sense of being that you've found has had to shed. You've had to give away parts of yourself in order to move forward, to move with the astrology, to move around the zodiac. And then when we get to the 9th of April, we'll experience the complete solar eclipse in Aries. And this is the part of our astrology where the dragon is facing. So rather than shedding, there might be something like deluge or extra in your place of relationships, the places that you commit and bond with other people. Now, it sounds spooky, and this work isn't to spook you. This work is to provide you with some sense of understanding or some sense of comfort during very difficult times. This is the second round of recent eclipses in Libra and in Aries. We have to cast our mind back to October of last year to remember the last eclipses in Libra and in Aries. This is the second incarnation of that period of time. So I'm going to gently hold your hand as we may register similarities or commonalities to October as to now. What is feeling unjustified or feeling unfair, a sense of growing injustice that is rising in the collective culture, and where are we being headed? What is the point in the chart that is feeling like insatiability? If it's Aries, that's self-determination, that's self-righteousness, that is something about being strong and individual. Difficult topics to relate to a house that should be about the other, that should be about your relationships. When I look at a Libra rising chart, I look at that polarity and I find the ways and the tools to understand why. Because you are so concerned with the greater group, because you are a sign that's ruled by Venus, which does want love and connection and beauty and harmony in relationship. To see Aries in your 7th house points to some of your attitudes around coupling, around connecting, the importance of your own determination in the relationship, your boundary, your sense of self to be maintained in relationship, and also the confidence that you can imbue in those that you're in relationship with, and also the confidence in your own self that you can glean from your relationships. Now, this is the point of eclipse in April on the 9th that is pulling major focus and may feel a little bit sore for you too, because this eclipse is happening in exact conjunction with the asteroid Chiron. Now, in the mythology, Chiron was the one that had the answers for everyone, that was devoted to healing and a life of service, that was devoted to philosophy and to herbalism, to learning the nutrients of the planet and finding salves for other people's wounds. However, when it came to a critical wound that Chiron faced, nothing that they had learned they could heal alone. They couldn't do it by themselves. Try as they might to heal their own pain, they just couldn't do it. And so this is a story that I'm looking at in your 7th house, perhaps some unconscious wounding that is being brought into stark focus right now in the way that you come into either romantic relationships or the way that you do relate to other people. Try as you want and will and would have it. Connection might be difficult, and it might be a moment for you that these eclipses are drawing into your vision. You might feel that there are occurrences or situations in your life that bring up things from the past or bring up old ways of being or old ways of thinking about yourself in concurrency with your relationship status or the way that you feel a part of something. Libra longs to feel a part of something. They really do. They long to feel connected, and they long to feel that their work is of service and is helping and is keeping others in mind. And so when met with absolute injustice or in the face of crisis that feels so unfair, in the face of suppression or oppression of any kind, Libras will fly off the handle and they will tend to dissociate because of their connection with the air element. So this is tender work that we're going to be doing over the next 3 weeks. We can't work with the moon as we would normally do. We can't look forward to a lunation in our 7th house or our 1st house, Libra rising, for the next bit of time, the next months. That won't be accessible to us. What we can do is look to the other planets that might be helping or peppering this moment with a bit of extra information. So not to get confusing with the astrological language, but we can look to the 2 planets that are the rulers of these 2 signs, that being Venus in Libra and Mars in Aries. These 2 planets are going through their own initiation into reality. If we think about Saturn And the visual image of Saturn, which is those rings, they look like a boundary. Saturn was the original outer limits of our perceived galaxy. Without a telescope, Saturn was the boundary. And so we think about things like containership, about control, about restriction. We also think about things like diligence and practice and rehearsal, which is probably familiar to you from our last readings. Well, the reason I bring Saturn up in Pisces, which is your sixth house of repetition, of work, of service in this life. Venus has passed through and had to move past Saturn right before this lunar eclipse in Libra. And so there might have been something valuable there for you in the continual hard work that you've been facing, in the diligence that you've had to maintain through this massive process of commitment. Perhaps you're working towards a project that is just growing in size, or your commitments are growing in intensity. Perhaps a few days before this eclipse in your first house, there was something of a message that you received, maybe in the sacred rhythm of your work. Perhaps when we're talking about these really tender spots about relationships and love and self-worth and the other and failures and trauma, there's something in that sort of cosmic rhythm in your sixth house of service in Pisces that you've been devoted to, and it's been sort of helping you maintain some of this shadow that is arriving. Some cultures, some lines of astrology look to the eclipses as our deep shadow work as well. So this could be the time for that too, Libra Rising. Midway through eclipse season, Mercury arrives and throws a freaking spanner in the works. If it wasn't difficult enough, Mercury will station retrograde on the 2nd of April in Aries. So there's information about your relationship styles and the way that you're coming together, how you're giving so much of yourself over to certain relationships, what needs to be pulled back. Then there's a stopgap on that development because Mercury will pass through Chiron, the wounded healer, giving us a little insight, but then stop and then move backwards from our perspective. Then we enter this solar eclipse in Aries. The dragon is urging us to look at our wounding in relationship, to look at the ways that we relate to other people, the way we think about ourselves in relationship. I'm not sure if you're the kind of person that doesn't buy the fact that you're worth relationship. Maybe that's something that's been latent in your unconscious. Whatever relationship you come into contact with, there's old stories that come up where you think, oh, I'm just going to wreck this. I just always wreck it. I always wreck it. That could be something that this eclipse is urging you to look at, because the sun and the moon and Chiron are all in conjunction in Aries. There's something about your autonomy, your bravery that needs focus at this time. 2 days after that solar eclipse, Mars will face off with Saturn in Pisces. So there's something that feels like the rhythms of your life, perhaps the service that you're involved in, perhaps the way that you've been sort of shouldering a lot of the responsibility in that work. There might be some anger that occurs there. You might think to yourself, I am so sick of giving my power away to others and allowing myself to have a conception of my self-worth on the basis of what other people tell me I'm worth. And I'll do extra work to prove my worth. There's a lot of us that grew up and we used to hold our work underneath our chin because that was the only way that we learned how to get praise, was by producing something, because we didn't know quite how to receive love and affection because it was limited unless we were being fabulous, unless we were being very talented, highly sought after skills. And so there might be something here about sort of a moment for you, Libra Rising, where you're like, I'm sick of freaking trying to prove my worth, prove that I belong here. that could be something, and that is something that I hold you in, and I identify with you on that one, Libra Rising. And I'm here to say that you're worth the world if you do nothing more with your life. If you do nothing, you're worth love and affection and respect for who you are, not what you do. So that's the personal journey that we're going on with these eclipses, Libra Rising. It's dense, it's thick, it's deep work. But I reckon we can handle it at this time. I reckon we're kind of ready for it. If we think about Pisces and the container ship that Saturn has been enforcing, it's not been enforcing to stop us going anywhere. It's actually a snorkel to go deeper and deeper into our understanding of our emotional selves, the water signs of our chart, the depth of our emotion. We can go there safely with a safe container, a safe boundary, and with good company that respects us, good relationships that honor our vulnerability as much as our strength, and honor our vulnerability as much as our sort of overt power too, our confidence. It's nice to see that you've been working with this seed, Libra Rising. It's really nice to see that you've been planting it and you've been doing what you need to, because it's going to grow. I can really feel that very sincerely, and it's been a lot of hard work. There's been a lot of that hard work that Saturn in Pisces in your 6th house has been enforcing, and you hear that phrase, do the work. Sort of like, yeah, how? It seems as though you know how, and you've been doing it really, really sincerely. I love this version of the Three of Wands. I hope that you can see that clear enough. You're ready. You've written that treasure map. It's taken you your whole life to get to this point and to start it off. You can see that beautiful creature in the center of this version of the Three of Wands. She knows and sees everything, and she's respected here. There's magic in 3. It's a good number for magic, the power of 3. What I'm also looking at is encouragement and support and company from someone else. So in that seed sowing that you've been doing, I'm not sure if you can see that, in that growth that you've been willing to see in before your eyes, there's someone in your environment right now, and they might appear wiser than their age. That might just be a little character reference so you can figure out who I'm talking about. But I trust this person because they're wanting to plant the same things that you are. They're wanting the same growth. And so this is beneficial in this work in relationships. If it's a moment for you to stop shouldering so much responsibility, then this character can take some of that, because they're working with you. They're working to grow this thing with you, not waiting for you to grow it so they can enjoy it and take it or benefit off it, not waiting to offer you affection until you impress them. They're here for you right now. They're here in the depth and in the light. So hopefully you can register who I'm talking about and trust it, because eclipses in the 1st house, where you're being required to shed a layer or 2 or 3, and eclipses in your 7th house, where you're inundated with the potential to heal in your relationships, is a powerful moment. And I hope that this reading's provided you with a little comfort as you face it. If you're still here with me, Libra Rising, I'd love for you to put a guitar in the comments for me, please, in honor of my favorite Libra Rising, Courtney Love. I would love that. If you'd like me to read your birth chart, I can draw you one like this, and we can make an appointment via Zoom, and I'll read it to you. You can head to Uma Ruby, which is my website, and make an appointment with me. If you'd like to support my work financially, head to buymeacoffee.com/umaruby, and you can support my work for 10 Australian dollars a month, or you can tip me, whatever you'd like to do. I'm going to take a rest during eclipse season. Not a rest, I'm going to be working as I always do, but I'm putting together a presentation that has hit me like a bolt out of the blue. And hopefully that will be ready in time for a really pertinent moment of commemoration coming up between eclipses. So this is your reading for eclipse season. I'll be back with you to talk about your astrology come a fresh, free moon. But until then, take it easy, take it slow, and trust yourself through this. I love you, Libra Rising. Hello, Aquarius Rising. Welcome to your reading for eclipse season, round 1 of 2024. Now, I've decided to do something a little bit different this time around, Aquarius Rising. Rather than give you separate readings for the separate eclipses, I've decided to bring the information into one reading to help us ascertain the connection between polarity of the signs and between the areas of your life, the houses in which these eclipses are about to take place. I think that one can inform the other, and I think that now, of all times, is a great opportunity for us to speak about unity rather than division. I love doing astrological study because it gives us a greater scope as to what we have in common with one another. Where are our strengths? Where are our weaknesses? Where do we need encouragement? But if you think about it, each of the signs has a part to play in our life in some way. It doesn't matter so much if you don't have planets in there. We can identify and empathize and become one with each of the signs of the zodiac because they all play a part somewhere in our life. Eclipse season is always treacherous. It sounds like a bold thing to say, but I think I can safely say it. It always seems that things go awry or things reveal themselves at eclipse season. Things are shown to us with no warning, and things need to shed without warning too. In my life, there's been notable moments as we roll along that have all occurred around eclipses. They've all happened at pretty pertinent times in my life, and they've shown me a mode of acceptance as I move forward. A lot of this study, I went back to look at my life and looked at when the eclipses were and looked at what parts of my life they were affecting, and it gave some context to my experience rather than it being sad or being for no perceivable reason. It gave me context to keep going and to understand that the energy does shift. When you feel it in your body, Aquarius Rising, I'd encourage you to trust it. This is something that we can really encourage Aquarians to do, is to get in the body and to really start to work with that thing called intuition. The mind can take precedence so often, with Aquarius. It's so good to step back in the body and feel how it's feeling. So if you feel there's a tense energy in the room, you can probably trust that. If you feel that there is a energy in the culture, you can probably trust that too, and do what you need to do to find ways to keep yourself safe and to keep yourself grounded and to keep yourself moving as well. We don't want to be frightened and shut ourselves in from this life. That's something that I'm learning rapidly. And I understand that it's okay that there is those moments where you need to retreat and you need to process. But I do hope for you that it's a process in which you can move forward after this as well. Now, the two signs that we're speaking about are Libra, with the first lunar eclipse occurring on the 25th of this month of March, I think on the day that I'll be ready to release these. And the second eclipse is a solar eclipse in Aries, which is happening on the 9th of April. And there's polarity with these two feelings, isn't there? Libra is led by Venus. Libra is all about equality, justice, fairness, right relationship, coming together, sharing together, beauty. Aries is all about self-determination, about individual call and response, about trusting your gut, trusting your thought, about trusting yourself. There's so much about the self that is wrapped up in the significations of Aries. There's a boldness and there's a bravery that we can learn from with Aries. To have eclipses in these two places brings about a real growing sense of instability, a sense of instability around trusting oneself, and maybe a growing sense or a growing dread around injustice, which sort of permeates the culture at present. The last eclipses that we had in Aries and in Libra occurred in October of last year, so we must be mindful of that and hold this moment in some sort of sanctity too. To be reminded of that time and to also witness the ongoing plight that that time has brought to the surface is something that we must be very, very honourable with. When bringing polarity together, eclipses can sometimes do that because they force one another to look at one another, eye to eye. There's something here that needs to go, layers that need to shed, and there's also an urgency into a different part of our life. Now, looking on your birth chart, Aquarius Rising, we're looking at a shedding in your potential to travel, to move around, to expand your mind, to break free. There's part of your life at present that has put the kibosh on that. The eclipse in March on the 25th might echo that to some pertinent degree, or it might be something that you've been feeling since Aries season has arrived. This feeling of like, I feel that I'm rapidly becoming held in place. The dragon in Aries is pointed to your third house, your village, your homeland, your local environment. And there's something here that we've been talking about for some time, I feel, that has been about seeking out that village, seeking out where it is that you belong. The eclipses feel to me like any chance of moving around or activating a sense of freedom has been squashed. And so that feels some ways very unfair, very unjustified. I can feel the pain around that disappointment too, Aquarius Rising. What I'm looking at on this chart is that the solar eclipse in Aries on the 9th of April is in an exact conjunction with the asteroid Chiron, the one that salves the wounds of others, that has filled their mind with philosophical teachings in order to help to be a sage to other people, that has worked out the infrastructure of oppression and suppression and trauma to the nth degree, but they can't heal their own wound. That's how the mythology goes. Chiron was a beautiful centaur that had the answer for anything that you needed to know, any healing that you needed to engage in. But when they were wounded, they couldn't heal their own wound with what they had learned. And so the lesson here is we look to others in order to help salve that wound. When looking at an unconscious wound in the third house, it looks as though there might be some stories from before that might be bringing themselves up to be looked at this time in terms of your sense of belonging in any neighborhood. Some of us travel around this life and we are longing and looking for a home. We're longing and looking for a neighborhood, a village where we'll be welcomed into, where we'll be a part of the furniture, where we can feel that we can be ourselves and we can contribute to the fabric of that culture. And some of us keep looking, and we'll keep looking, and we'll find it, but we're not sure when we will. On my birth chart, my personal birth chart, my Chiron placement is in my third house, in direct conjunction with my IC, the bottom of the chart, my root. And so I can empathize with what these eclipses look like to me. I could be wrong. This might not be something that you feel so personally in your life, Aquarius, but there's definitely conversations around belonging, around where will I go, at this time, isn't there? Where is my homeland? Where will I feel safe and I feel welcome? A lot of pain attached to that, and the injustice of that option being denied, folks, in this life. It's a treacherous thing to think about displacement at this time. And we've all been thinking about displacement for months and months and months since Libra and Aries were last eclipsed. And will continue to do so. One thing that I'd like to bring into the conversation, though, Aquarius Rising, so you don't sink at this time. Hopefully these transits might provide your life with a bit of context at present. If there was disappointment around a great journey that has been squashed, if there was opportunities that you couldn't meet or that were no longer available to you, then hopefully you can find the pattern in the galaxy here, and that can give your pain some context, that can give that wound a bit of a salve at this time. Because eclipse season, as much shift and change as it brings about, there are moments to follow eclipse season that we get to look forward to. The first Libra eclipse on the 25th of March is hitting the point in our zodiac that speaks to the Two of Swords. This card represents to me a moment of intentional stillness, Aquarius Rising. There's a blindfold and there's two swords across the chest. But those two swords can also represent two truths or two realities. This card tells us that two things can be true at the same time. This card tells us that to act is not always necessary. Sometimes intentional stillness will help us through. We need time to process, and we don't need to speak on every impulse. So perhaps at the beginning of eclipse season on the 25th of March, this can be the card for you, for whatever tremors or whatever revelations, whatever wounds arrive around your sense of belonging in this life, your sense of belonging in the world, being part of the neighborhood, then we can use this card as our cue to be still at this time. Not everything needs to be answered to straight away. Another way to look at the third house, or the definition of it, is in the Hellenistic tradition, which is the ancient Greek tradition, used to be called the house of the goddess. Used to be a place of private ritual, of enacting and creating sacred space to give thanks to the feminine spirit. So that might be something that you can realign yourself with too, or get back in touch with during eclipse season. Globally, this eclipse is going to be visible right across the United States. And so conversations around deep wounding, damage, pain, the scars of which this structure was built upon will be coming into direct focus. There'll be an urgency to heal the rabid individualism of a culture too. There hopefully will be a call back to coming together, to a sense of collective power, collective compassion. But we'll see. I'm going to get you some tarot, Aquarius Rising. Actually, perhaps you need the crows at this time. I hope you like the atmosphere of this yellow. In my own work, I've been finessing and working from a dream that I had. I've been dreaming about the most intense blue color for a month now, like an ultramarine sort of deep blue, lapis blue. And it's come in all manner of form. Some of it's been really exhilarating, really powerful, really charged. Some of it's been really protective, really somber, really stoic. But it's always felt like an envelopment. And in elemental magic, I've been looking to some of the different variations on the colors that we talk to when we talk to the elements. And for a long time there, I had yellow as the earth, because for the Chinese tradition, the Japanese tradition, and also as a painter, yellow ochre, the color of the earth. But I've switched things around to include this blue, to include the depth of that blue in the water of my work, the emotional integrity. And I've switched around and decided that yellow, in the tradition of elemental magic, is the color for the air signs, for our atmosphere, our mind. There's something calming about the color yellow, and there's something that you can almost visually see the air in the atmosphere sometimes if you look in the right way. There's been a decision here, Aquarius Rising, to walk away. Speaking of air, speaking of the mind, speaking of truth or otherwise, there's been a combat here, a conflicting perspective coming head to head. And there's been a direct decision to put tools down and to move away from this conflict. And it does bring up that deep blue of the water, because someone was incredibly wanting to connect emotionally. Someone was very giving, or was wearing their heart on their sleeve very sincerely. And they've had to step away from this. And now they've entered a place that feels like entrapment. It feels like a cage of the mind. It feels like repetitive thought, and it feels like pain coming back to visit. And so what I want you to do at this time, Aquarius Rising, is to go gently and go sincerely into the depth of your emotion. Make sure that you are surrounded by people that you love, that people that care for you, that perhaps have been reaching out to you and wanting to speak to you for a while. And you can speak about whatever you wish to them. And they're going to help you with this sense of belonging, because you're not alone in that feeling of not really belonging anywhere. You're not alone feeling like an outlier or an outcast. That's the problem sometimes with Aquarians, is that they do feel so disconnected because they feel so far away, because their mind is working on the global effort. That perspective keeps them up there. We want you down here. So follow your depth, Aquarius Rising. Follow your water. Talk about this stuff. Be gentle during eclipse season. Don't attempt to solve anything. Let it take you. Let it happen. And make sure that you are protected. That's your reading. If you're still here with me, Aquarius Rising, can you please put a guitar in the comments in honor of my favorite Libra Rising, Courtney Love. I'll be with you after the eclipses are over. So a couple of weeks from now, I'm working on another project that hopefully I'll be able to share with you in tandem in the middle of this eclipse cycle. But don't quote me. It does have a lot to do with blue and depth and water, though. If you'd like me to read your birth chart, I'll draw you one that looks like this, and I'll read it to you via Zoom. You can make an appointment at umaruby.com. If I have spoken to you before and you'd like another reading, you can choose a magic, truth, love, growth, or femme reading. And I'll take you on a journey with the transits in the astrology and deeply, truly, sincerely with the tarot. I love you. I'll speak to you soon, and go gently, go wisely, go softly into the light. Much love, Aquarius. Hello, Gemini Rising. Welcome to your reading for Eclipse season, round 1 of 2024. Now, I've decided to do something a little different this time, Gemini Rising. Rather than give you 2 horoscopes for each of the eclipses, I've kind of consolidated the information into one reading. Number 1, to give myself a little rest during eclipse season 2, and number 2, to witness the similarity in polarity to sort of bring one side of the zodiac into relationship with the other side of the zodiac too. That's one really encouraging, important way to learn about astrology, is to recognize the similarities as much as the differences between each sign. If we look at our birth chart, we register that we have each of the signs in our nature. It's just a matter of where they lay, and we do this work to find common ground with our fellow man. So let's have a look at what we're working with from March the 25th, when the first eclipse occurs, until April the 9th, when the second eclipse occurs. On March the 25th, we have a lunar eclipse in Libra. And so this is going to be reminding us of the last axis of eclipses that we experienced on Libra and Aries. That was in October of last year. And so we register this moment with a solemn heart and with profundity, with conviction, with empathy. When looking at Libra in the tarot, we look to the Justice card. And so we see things like harmony, balance, fairness, equity, all of these wonderful qualities that justice should be blind, that there is a scale that evens the score. When an eclipse occurs in Libra, it can often feel unjustified, particularly if the dragon's tail is in the sign, as it was last year and is this year. A south node lunar eclipse or a south node solar eclipse feels like a shedding, feels like having to let go of something or to drop something. Forcibly, things are taken from us in a south node eclipse. And so justice quickly turns to injustice. Moving around and moving into the solar eclipse in Aries on April the 9th, we speak to the Emperor card. This is the card that talks to Aries. This speaks about self-actualization, self-determination, individuality, bravery, confidence, and might. Fire sign and air sign. The fire sign side of it is feeling really tempestuous. It's feeling really emboldened. The reason that we say this is because Libra is ruled by the planet Venus and Aries is ruled by the planet Mars. And you can see the polarity of those two energies already, can't you? One is about love and relationships and amiability. The other is about brute force and determination and sometimes violence. And so there's polarity here, but how do we bring them together? We look to your birth chart, Gemini Rising. We look to the houses that these two signs are in. On one side of the scale, we have Libra in your individual self-expression, the house that has you create and make love and enjoy life, the house that has you feel connected to the world through your craft. In Aries, we have the 11th house, which is your sense of the humanitarian spirit, the human group. And you can see that there's a polarity there, isn't there? One house, the Aries house, speaks to everyone, speaks to bravery as a group, the idea of being proud of where you came from, proud of the power in numbers. And then on the other side of the scale, we have a harmonic balance in your individuality. The way that you express yourself tends to lean towards the expression for the benefit of the other. It tends to lean towards collaborative efforts, towards working with a group. So there's seeds to be sown here. One definition is different to the other, but they have something in common. It's almost as if they're two sides of the same coin. We are all the same. We are all worthy of love. We are all worthy of protection at this time. So these eclipses are going to bring up a feeling of release, perhaps a feeling of setting down some of your more solo enterprises. There might be things in your creativity, in your vitality, that you feel that you need to set aside for a moment as we focus on your humanitarian spirit. Because the eclipse that's happening on April the 9th is in a direct conjunction with the asteroid Chiron, who speaks all about unconscious, hidden, concealed wounding, the wounding that can't be solved on one's own, this feeling of pain that is pulsating but needs support from other people. When I look to this configuration on your birth chart, Gemini Rising, I see a growing sense of wounding in the group, a feeling of not belonging, a feeling of being outer to the inner world, or a feeling of being dejected or rejected from a greater sense of humanity at this time. It feels really painful, and it feels like that the dragon's head is urging us to look at this over these eclipses. As far as that rhythm that you've struck with yourself in your own creative flow, in that world of creating and finding harmony and balance on your own, off your own steam, in your own way, you're being asked to shed that for the moment and register that wounding of being not included or being on the outer, being discluded from the greater sense of the human species. That's a wound that you have in common with more people than you think. And perhaps this urgency to look to your sense of humanitarian spirit at this time, to take off your blinkers and to look around and to hear the voices of other people that are in pain too, that feel displaced, that feel that they've got nowhere to go. This is the time that perhaps you will rally together. There might be something of a communion that occurs at this eclipse or through these eclipses that has you feeling less responsible for taking care of your own wounds in private and in solitude. It's so funny in life when you sort of finally are able to admit something, either to yourself or gently vocally to others, this common feeling of, oh, I'm so glad that you said that because I've been feeling the same way. I've been feeling just as lost or just as dejected or separate from this sense of humanity. We can share this wound together, and we can also help heal that wound amongst ourselves. And the more people that you do that with, it sort of grows like a contagion. It's sort of, you grow in strength. And the strength is the depth of your emotions, Gemini Rising. The strength is your ability to feel them at this time. And I know that it's a triggering time of life. I know that there's been an influx of deep emotion that has had a lot of us need to compartmentalize that and to put it away somewhere because we can't deal with it at the moment. But what it looks like to me is that these eclipses, there's an urgency to connect with empathy and with care, to recognize the vulnerability in our community, in our friendship circles, and to hold one another rather than try and continually rise above it or to separate ourselves from it. There are many guises that we wear in this life too, and I think that Aries, being the individualist that it is, there's something of a brave mask that we tend to put on too. And there's something in the culture that sometimes leads us to act successful and then you will be successful. And I find that to be really disingenuous. I find that these eclipses are going to force some mask off moments, Gemini Rising. There's room for you to be vulnerable. There's room for you to be scared. There's room for you to be lost at this time. The commands or the urgency that you feel that you're required to look successful, to look at ease, is going to come into a bit of a face-off. I feel this, and I think that you feel it too. So the polarity of your individuality, your fifth house where Libra is, the shedding perhaps of some layers of your solo enterprise is then going to lean into an urgency to commune. One word for the 11th house, for your Aries house, is commune. We must gather together during this. We must hold hands, and we must work from kindness and from our feeling. The depth of our feeling is being called at this time, Gemini Rising. As much as the mask feels safe, it comes off with or without your say-so during eclipse season. So let's work with Chiron. Let's work with the dragon. Let's follow. Let's chase the dragon. I know the 11th house to a lot of people might seem scary at present because some people are finding it difficult to trust each other, to trust one another at this time. But there is safety in numbers. And there is safety in numbers when you are working from emotion and from compassion, not so much from hatred and righteousness. I want to get you some tarot, I think, Gemini Rising. We can speak to Pisces at this time too, because each of those signs are ruled by a planet. In Libra, we have Venus, which goes to further extrapolate and expand upon the beauty in your artistic, creative, sensual expression. And then in Aries, we have Mars, which goes to maybe show some form of leadership in community. Perhaps there's something that you feel called at the time, from time to act as leader in community, or one of the leaders. And these two planets have had to face off and be initiated through Saturn in Pisces. So up to your 10th house of your visible career, your most public-facing self, your vocation, your magical work, Venus has had to pass through Saturn, putting on almost like a bulletproof vest, I might say. And this is before the eclipse in Libra. And then after the eclipse in Aries, Mars will have to pass through Saturn as well. And this might feel a bit more sinister. This might feel a bit more combative. And if we're looking to your 11th house, we're looking to growing dissent here, angry words. But I want you to remember that you have room in your essence to do both. You're a Gemini rising. You know the importance of duality and of fusing, of incorporating duality into your own self. You can see complexity. You can speak to complexity. You understand this implicitly. Mercury is your guiding light, or one of them anyway. And Mercury is going to station retrograde right bang in the middle of these eclipses on the 2nd of April. And so there is a feeling of instability again, a feeling of mixed messaging. And so I ask you for a moment, Gemini Rising, to step away from your intellect, from your mind, from your thought forms, and step more into something that feels like intuition, that feels like your body, that feels like your heart, that feels like your depth. Your second sight is being required at this time. If Mercury is going to station retrograde in your sense of the humanitarian condition, I need you to use your spidey senses, not your mind. It does feel like we're being suspended in motion sometimes during eclipse season. All bets are off. There's no moon to trust. And for folks that have been so used to relying on the moon and its processes during eclipse season can feel like instability. It can feel worrying, can feel really unsafe. But one thing that I've learned about these moments where you really just have to let things take you and you really have to remain in your physical self, is that what at one time felt like fear or felt like oppression or felt like drowning actually feels like freedom. When you remember how to swim, Gemini Rising, you can move around in this unknowing around where it is that you belong in a group, if you even belong to the human species is sometimes a question that a lot of us ask. But there's something that is taking you, and there's a confidence and a trust that you can instill in yourself that you are not going to drown. Because moving away from structure, moving away from a pathway that looked like it was the real deal, moving away from this space of legacy, when all that falls away at a time, you don't know where you're going. But I really trust, Gemini Rising, that you're in company. You're not doing this alone. There's someone with you that is constant and true and grounded. And I think that we all need a bit of grounding through all of this deep work that the eclipses are urging us to enact. You know, the depths of Pisces is limitless. And these two planets that are informing these eclipses are initiated by karma. Another way to think about Saturn is a karmic retribution. So I want you to feel supported and secure at this time, and also I want you to feel untethered and completely boundless at this time too, Gemini Rising. Two things can happen at the same time. Two things can be true at the same time, and you've got support. You're not going this alone. There's someone in your corner that is really, really available and really grounded and has your back. It feels like their strength can support you during whatever meltdown or whatever journey, pathway you need to follow through. That wound around not belonging is intense, and it comes from somewhere, sometimes quite literally in the world that we move around. In fact, that's often the seed of where this sense of not belonging might come from in the physical world. We were actively rejected from this place or that group or this friendship. We were actively felt the horrible feeling of backs turned on us. But you're not alone at this time, Gemini Rising. There's someone with you. So if you can identify who that is, and if that solidity in that relationship can help you swim deeper with this emotional self, this emotional discovery, it's going to inform your work from now on. Pisces is really in a initiation, and you have the stuff to see it through because you understand complexity. You understand how to talk about complexity. You understand that you can hold one thing to be true in your hand, and yet in the other hand, something else is absolutely valid and true also. Don't let yourself, from the experiences of your past, feel uninvited in your present. That's your reading, Gemini Rising. If you're still here with me, can you please put a guitar in the comments in honor of my favorite Libra Rising, Courtney Love. Speaking of outsider energies and moving through this, living through this, I appreciate your company, Gemini. If you'd like me to read your birth chart, I shall draw you one. They look like this, and I will read it to you via Zoom. You can make an appointment at umaruby.com. If you'd like to support my work, you can subscribe for $10 a month over at buymeacoffee.com/umaruby. You can throw some money in the tip jar there too. I won't be with you for the rest of Eclipse season. I'm going to give myself this time to feel it and to allow what's coming to come. But I still will be working, and in terms of going deep, you may have noticed that I've changed the color form or the color way for the air signs. I've done it for the majority of the other signs too. That depth of blue, that depth of the integrity of our emotions came to me in a dream in the form of the color blue. And so I've, in the tradition of elemental magic, given the color blue to the water signs, and I'm endeavoring to do and present my research project on someone who had so much water and depth in their chart that affected a generation. So it's a different format. It'll be less about you, perhaps the next time I see you, but about someone that you can probably identify with. So until I do that, and now that I've said it, I have to, take care of yourself. If you need me, write me. And I'll speak to you very soon, Gemini, in the clearing of a moon that we have some say-so in, we have some relationship with. Let the eclipses do their work. We will recommune after. Much love.